All right, let's get right into it. For decades really, the world of work in India has been run by this super complex web of laws. But that's all changing. We are talking about a massive fundamental reset that touches everything. Your salary, your working hours, your social security. It affects pretty much every single employee and employer in the country. This is the story of India's new labor codes.
To really get how big of a deal this is, you have to see where we're coming from. For years, the whole system was this maze of 29 different labor laws. Many of them overlapped, some even contradicted each other. It was confusing for employees trying to figure out their rights, and honestly, a huge headache for businesses trying to do the right thing and stay compliant.
And that brings us to the great simplification. So what happened? All of those 29 laws have been swept up, consolidated, and streamlined into just 4 straightforward codes. As of late 2025, these 4 codes are the new rulebook, designed to bring some much-needed clarity and modernization to India's entire workforce. So how are we going to break all this down? First up, we'll look at the Great Labor Code Reset to get the big picture. Then we'll get personal and decode your new payslip. What does it mean for your take-home pay? After that, we'll talk about the new definition of a work week. Then we'll explore the expanded safety net for workers, and finally, we'll look at what this all means for the business world.
Okay, let's jump into our first section. And just to be clear, this isn't some small software update. This is a complete teardown and rebuild of India's labor laws, and it's all built on 4 brand new pillars. And here they are, the 4 pillars. First, you have the Code on Wages, which is all about standardizing how we're paid. Second, the Code on Social Security. This one expands things like your PF and Gratuity. Third is the Industrial Relations Code, which handles things like unions and disputes. And fourth, the OSHWC Code. That's a mouthful. It stands for Occupational Safety, Health, and Working Conditions Code. Basically, it's all about keeping people safe at work. So instead of 29 different things, you have one single unified framework.
All right, now for the part that I'm sure you're very interested in, your money. One of the biggest, most talked about changes is a new rule that's going to fundamentally change how your pay slip is structured.
So what is this new 50% salary rule that everyone's talking about? Well, it's actually a pretty simple concept, but it has some really significant ripple effects for both your monthly budget and your savings down the road.
Here's the core idea. The new law says that the allowances part of your salary, things like house rent allowance, travel allowance, all those extras, they cannot be more than half of your total salary, your CTC. What that means in practice is that your basic pay now has to be at least 50% of your total compensation.
And this shows you the before and after perfectly. A lot of companies used to keep the basic pay pretty low and then pile on a bunch of allowances. Well, now that basic pay component has to go up. So what's the trade-off? Your contributions to long-term savings like your Provident Fund and Gratuity, which are tied to your basic pay, are going to increase. That's fantastic for your retirement nest egg, but it could mean your actual in-hand take-home salary each month might be a little bit lower.
Okay, so let's move on from your payslip for a second. The new codes also redraw the very definition of a work week. They introduce a whole new level of flexibility that, frankly, just wasn't there before.
You've probably seen the headlines about a potential 4-day work week. Well, this is where that comes from. The law now allows for a totally new kind of schedule. Instead of working, say, 5 9-to-5-ish days, you could potentially work 4 longer 12-hour days and still hit that same 48-hour weekly total.
Now, a few crucial things to remember here. The 48-hour weekly limit, that's not changing. What is changing is the flexibility in how you get to those 48 hours. And this isn't something your boss can just decide for you. Employers can only offer this with your consent. And, really importantly, the rules on overtime are actually stronger now. Any extra hours you work have to be paid at double your normal rate.
This next part is honestly a massive step forward. The new codes are casting a much wider Social Security safety net, bringing in millions of workers who were previously left out in the cold.
And this is a true landmark change. For the very first time, gig and platform workers are being formally recognized by the law. We're talking about the people who deliver your food on Zomato or drive your cab on Ola. The platforms they work for will now have to contribute to a social security fund for them. This is a game changer for the entire gig economy.
And the safety net gets even bigger. If you're a fixed-term employee, you now get your gratuity payment after just 1 year of service, not the 5 years it used to be. Plus, for the first time, there's a universal minimum wage that applies to all workers, whether they're in the organized sector or the unorganized sector. It aims to create a basic wage floor for absolutely everyone.
The codes also take some really important steps for women in the workplace.
With their consent, women are now officially allowed to work night shifts in any kind of business, as long as the employer can guarantee their safety and security. And beyond that, there's now an explicit ban on any kind of gender-based discrimination when it comes to hiring, pay, or promotions. So we've covered the impact on employees pretty thoroughly. But what about the other side of the coin? For businesses, these codes are meant to kick off a new era, one that's focused on making the rules simpler and easing the whole compliance headache.
A huge source of frustration for businesses was dealing with all the different registrations, licenses, and filings. Well, the new system is all about a single window approach. We're talking one registration, one license, and one annual return that covers everything under all 4 codes. That's a massive reduction in paperwork and red tape.
There's also a really interesting philosophical shift happening here. The old role of the labor inspector, which was often seen as just about finding faults and handing out penalties, is gone. It's being replaced by the inspector cum facilitator. Their job isn't just to enforce rules, but to actually provide guidance and help companies get things right. It's a move from punishment to partnership.
Now, here's another key change, and this one affects larger companies. Before, if a company with 100 or more workers wanted to conduct layoffs, they needed to get government approval first. That number, that threshold, has now been raised. Approval is now only required for companies with 300 or more workers. So, with these codes now officially the law of the land, the message for every single organization out there is crystal clear. It is time to adapt. This isn't something you can put on the back burner. It requires immediate changes to how things are done in HR, in payroll, and in legal departments. So what's the immediate to-do list for companies? Well, number 1, they've got to review and rework all their salary structures to make sure that basic pay hits that 50% mark. 2, HR policies need a complete refresh to reflect all the new rules on working hours, overtime, and leave. And 3, they have to figure out a system to handle Social Security contributions for all the gig or platform workers they rely on. So, there you have it. The new framework is in place, the rules are set. From the way our payslips are calculated to the hours we work and the protections we get, everything is being redefined. This is, without a doubt, one of the biggest transformations in India's employment history. The new codes are here. The real question is, are we ready for the change?